welcome to my workshop. My name's Darren, and today I'm going to show you how to service and unclog a Festool BS75 belt sander. It's not that hard. Let's have a look. I've had my BS75 for years and do a lot of pine work, and as you probably know, pine has a lot of pitch, a lot of sap in the wood, and over a period of years it built up and it clogged part of the intake. I was sanding some of this what I believe is some sort of oak or a eucalypt pretending to be an oak, and it just wasn't sucking up the dust at all. I was getting huge clumps of dust just sort of coming out behind the unit and not being sucked up. So I pulled it apart and cleaned it out, and I'm going to show you how I did it. It should go without saying that obviously you would need the unit unplugged to do this sort of service. So to dismantle and unblock this, you don't need a lot of tools. If you have the surface leveling frame for your BS75, then you'll probably have to remove these little mounting brackets before you can get to the unit. Those require a 4mm Allen key. I've just got a little Allen head and a little screwdriver there, which is very handy. So they just unscrew like that and come off, and you have to remove those to get to these screws. So once you've got these mounting brackets removed, we move on to the main unit. The tools you'll need for the rest of it are a Torx 15 screwdriver and a Phillips head, probably a number 2. That's what I'm using. We're going to remove the belt quite simply. Okay, so then we're going to remove this assembly in here so we can get to the Torx screws that are underneath this wheel. So we're just going to take our Phillips head screwdriver here and undo these 2 screws. Now I've got myself a little plastic tray here. I'm going to put the screws in there in the order that I take them out. They're all numbered. You'll probably see here 1 through 7. So as I take the first lot of screws out, I'll put them in tray number 1. And then when I reassemble it, I'll just go backwards. And then the next step, after you've taken those 2 screws out, is to unwind this little knob here that you would normally use for aligning your belt. We take that out completely. Now I'm not going to stick that in the tray. I'm going to put that straight back in the unit. That makes it super obvious how it goes back together later, and also keeps us from losing any parts. So we'll just pop that to the side. Okay, now we can see all of the Torx screws. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 Torx screws to remove. Okay. Now we've got this belt assembly, so we've got to take that housing off there first. Again, that's our T15 Torx screwdriver. We'll just take that off. Yeah, no, take the screw out of it. And the belt's very easy to remove because we just squeeze the 2 together, pop the belt off, and there we go. And so that's the base of the unit around which the belt would normally run. Pop that to the side, and then under here, this is where our blockage was. Now you're not going to see much of a blockage this time around because I did clean it out last week. You can see a tiny bit there. Alright, so now this piece needs to be removed, and that piece just slides in. There we go. That's all the disassembly we need to do. So now we're down to the cleaning. And you can see even in just the 2 weeks of use since I last cleaned it out, we've got a build-up of more sawdust in here. That's just a little screw hole, so that doesn't really matter. But we'll get all that out. But the main point where you'll get blockages will be basically underneath this fella, which we've just removed, in and around here. You'll find that dust mixed with sap or pitch will get built up in areas like this, and sometimes if you're unlucky down in here in the fan blades. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a toothbrush and just give the whole thing a good clean and get all the dust out of there. Of course it would be possible to go further and start doing things like taking the motor out, disassembling the fan and so on. But I don't want to encourage everybody to do that. Someone might end up getting hurt. We don't want that. You also might see a build-up of pitch in here as well. This is where it blows out into the bag or the dust extractor hose. So the walls inside here are quite common to get a build-up of pitch. So we're going to try and clean that off. You won't always just be able to brush it away with a toothbrush, but the head of a screwdriver is good for scraping away at pitch. That works well. Just be gentle, don't gouge your plastic. This is fairly firm plastic. You're unlikely to gouge it to pieces. And of course a blast with a bit of compressed air is always a good idea. So reassembly really is just doing the whole thing in opposite directions. So let's chuck this little fella in first. So as I mentioned earlier, you can see there's this little ridge that I'm going to have to tuck in. So I'm going to hook it up underneath, ready to go. Grab myself a flat bladed screwdriver and then just lift that into place, and it just clicks and it's in. Okay, so now the next step is we're going to place this housing back on, like so, but we need our belt, of course, our dry belt. So I'm just going to hook the belt over first. It's actually easier to align the belt before you actually put the two plates together. So there we go. So now we're going to put our long screws back in the corners, the ones with the Torx 15 head on them. And remember there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of those. So we're going to put those in. That's our Torx screws in place. Let's pop our cap over our belt, Longer screws than I thought there, but anyway, there we go, done. Okay, so now we've got to put the guts back in. The next assembly to insert back into our sander is the front wheel / alignment assembly, or belt guide. So we're going to pop that in. Just be careful of this little piece of plastic here, that don't lose that. That's got to go back on the cap of the spring here as we insert it. So another thing to keep in mind too before we get that far is that when inserting this frame, the frame here gets pushed outwards by the spring. You can see that that's bent that way a little bit. There's not really a way around that. So the easiest thing to do when reassembling is to put the screw part way into this hole first before trying to get that in or anything else in. It just makes it easy to align. So I'll show you what I mean. We're going to hold this in and align this screw hole with this before doing anything else, basically. Here we go. It's the only difficult part of the whole process. Alright, not putting that screw in the whole way, because now what we're going to do, while we've still got a nice gap at this end, is we're going to reassemble our spring / tightening assembly. So again, we've got the little piece of plastic over the end of the spring, and that goes that way. This piece fits over the axle. It's worth keeping your thumb over that part of the axle to stop it popping out as you put everything together, because it can, and then it's annoying. Little piece of plastic. There we go. And then we're going to push this bolt and little captive head in through that hole there and tighten that up partially and put in our remaining screw. Now we're nearly done. There we are, tighten that one up all the way, and now tighten this one up the rest of the way. that's it, we're done. The only thing left to do now is to put the belt on and to align the tracking here using that. So now we just going to put the belt on, so we'll lift that fella up, pull the wheel in, slot the sanding belt back into place, flip that down. Alright, now that's still got a lot of screwing in to be done before we start. Okay, let's try that and adjust accordingly. Okay, so that's tracking too far into here at the moment, so I'll just back that off a fraction. So what I've got now is a little gap here that's about equivalent to the little gap over the other end. It's running nice and straight. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to do it to an extreme just to show you what happens and why tracking is important.
There you go. You can see why that's no good.
Perfect. And that's it. We're done. Okay, so that wasn't so hard and didn't take that long. And to be honest, that's the first time I've had to do it in 10 plus years. So it's not something you'll have to do very often. But at some point, if you've got one of these, you will have to do it. And now you know how it's done. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and hopefully I'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.